Welcome everyone to the Mom Empowerment Podcast. Um, it's an idea that Ermatan and I have been, you know, bouncing off of for quite some time, and we're having a hard time believing that we're finally doing this.
Yes. After endless discussions that we could have recorded and
I know,
help people
I know,
see that
car
they're not alone.
conversations,
We're finally
WhatsApp,
doing it.
podcasts, all of that.
Yeah.
So why are we doing this? What made us do this?
We want to build a community of moms to help each other out, to not feel overwhelmed, to see that we're not alone in this, and really just have discussions around being a mom in this modern world and the struggles and the struggles that come with it and how we can navigate those, the day-to-day life and the struggles and the feelings and the overwhelming days and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a space essentially for us to share those experiences, but also not find ourselves down that rabbit hole of like, oh, how am I going to survive this or whatnot? But it's how we can lift each other up. How can we reframe situations? How can we reframe our mindset and grow together as we're navigating motherhood? But to do that is that we need that sense of belonging and community and to feel seen and heard. And because it really does take a village. It's just that,
Yes.
like you said, we're in this modern world where people are more individualistic. You don't
Yeah.
necessarily feel that sense of community or that sense of belonging. And so motherhood can feel very lonely. And
Yes.
even when we do have friends, we don't necessarily, I mean, friends that are moms too, we don't necessarily talk about the shitty days. We don't necessarily talk about, the days that we wanted to like flip out at our kids, or we did flip out our kids, but then because we're afraid of judgment, we're afraid of being seen as not a good mom, and especially moms, we carry this pressure where we need to be or act a certain way. We need to be patient. We need to be calm. We need to be regulated. But we're also learning and figuring things out. So we need to show, like, part of this, the idea that we had is that how do we show compassion or grace to ourselves, like empathy towards ourselves, so that we're not so hard on ourselves either. We're carrying a big load. Yeah, so that's kind of what pushed us to start this. How did we meet?
I can't believe, like, I was looking at the date this morning. It's been 15 years. We know each other. Like, time flew. I don't get it. It's been 15 years. We met at Dawson College, and it was a wonderful time for both of us. We made a lot of nice connections and good friends that we have kept till today.
Yeah.
15 years.
Yeah. 15 years and so many different like milestones, because we ended up, because we went to college together, we graduated from college together, but we also continued in university together. So we saw each other in university, we both graduated, we attended each other's weddings, then we became, like we celebrated the milestones of, careers and buying houses, and then motherhood. And then you became a mom before me, and like 2 kids before. And then you experienced, there's another type of motherhood that you experienced that for me as like a friend, I don't think I was able to understand to a certain extent. And I think that's the piece where sometimes motherhood can feel so lonely because we're not all in different seasons of life. And then forward later, I became a mom too. So we're both moms now. You have 3 kids and I have 2 kids. And luckily they're close enough that we're like close enough in age where we're able to bring them all together. We also had the unique experience of being pregnant at the same time. So we have daughters that are 3 weeks apart, which is, it was a blessing. And I think that's what even got us closer. It strengthened our relationship.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's special. I think it's special to be
Yeah.
able to grow with someone and then continue kind of growing.
Yeah.
But then how can we really elevate that? And I think that's again part of the reason why we wanted to create this platform together.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, so for whoever's listening to us, this is why we're here. This is what we're starting it. We're testing a little bit of the waters to see what works, what topics we're going to cover. We want to cover different aspects of motherhood, be it, compassion towards ourselves, the fear of judgment, the mom rage that can happen, the loneliness that can show up, subjects like postpartum
Yeah.
in different communities in the Western society, but we also come from a different cultural backgrounds as well. So how does that mesh with the Western view of things? So it's like a mixed match of everything because we don't fit the typical mold either. So that's the thing. We're creating our own mold. That is a little bit more flexible because we want to embrace that part of the cultural differences as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where we're at.
Yes. Should we dive right in to our
Go
topic for today?
Yes.
So the topic we chose for our first video, I think will resonate with a lot of moms, is how to be, or not how to be, but how we should be kind to ourselves as moms. I feel like I'll speak for myself. I am always, unkind to myself. I set really high expectations, and then when these high expectations are not met, I get overwhelmed, and it ends up negatively affecting me and my children.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, how do we navigate that? How do we not just not set like unrealistic expectations, but also if like you don't do necessarily, you don't end up being able to do everything you needed to do for a day, how do you like not let that affect you to the point of it being like overwhelming and affecting your kids and all that? So how to be kind to yourself as a mom?
Yeah, like how to prevent ourselves from spiraling and thinking that we're a failure because we didn't accomplish all of the tasks that we set ourselves up to.
Yeah.
And how can we reframe it where we actually look at the tasks that we did accomplish? There's so many hidden tasks that moms do that are taken for granted. Like I think just this morning, I think I already passed the vacuum like 3 times.
Yeah.
Would anybody notice that? Does anybody know? It's like the picking up the stuff, the constant picking up, the amount of times my kids take out things and throw them out. Like, I'm not like, I need my space to be a little bit more just calm for my mental, like for my brain. I get overwhelmed when there's too many things. And I'm not saying I'm not the most organized person or anything like that, but it's more like I need visual clutter to not show.
Yeah.
So, when the kids are making a mess in the living room, I'm just looking at my living room. When they make a mess, I let it happen. But then as soon as they're done, I start cleaning up, except that they're kids. So they're going to restart it. So like 5 times a day, or if not more, I mean, just my mornings alone, I'm like putting the pillow back on the couch. I'm putting the cover back on the couch.
Same.
And it's like, it's physical labor, but that goes unnoticed because it just keeps happening. And so then I get frustrated, or then that's how I start getting angry. And then I'm like, oh, like I'm being an impatient mom. Maybe I should just let it go. Maybe I should go with the flow. Something is wrong with me. And then I start spiraling. But then how do we reframe that? These are all part of the hidden labor of motherhood, but at the same time, how can I show myself more grace? It's okay.
Exactly.
It's essentially how do we show ourselves that grace and kindness of, rather than like fall into that spiral of I'm not doing a good job, I'm not I'm not like this. And then it's hard because we're a generation of moms that is momming through social media, where there's a bunch of social media platforms that portray so many aspects of motherhood, and then it's hard to not fall into that self-criticism or judgment. Like there's the granola moms, the ones that make everything from scratch, and like it's amazing, but
Yeah.
not necessarily the reality for everyone. There's like the talk about the really like gentle parenting, which is, I think, is important, but there's like different aspects of gentle parenting that becomes um like confusing because it might not resonate with everybody. But even to like that aspect of gentle parenting or respectful parenting, the struggle with that too is that um, for us as moms, like, speaking for myself, when I became a mom, there's feelings that started showing up for me that I didn't experience before.
Yeah.
And so like that emotional regulation, that aspect
Yeah.
where like since when am I this angry? When did I
Exactly.
become this impatient? Like I don't remember this part of me. So then how am I gonna do the respectful parenting or the gentle parenting when I'm realizing there's like a part of me that still needs to self-regulate, like the emotional regulation for myself.
Yeah.
And then like I realize I have things like different triggers, and there's different things that I need to also unlearn. But for me to unlearn, I need to figure out where do they come from.
Yeah.
Where does that stem from? So it's a lot of like self-reflection and being very vulnerable with myself so that I can show myself grace. But I need to understand like what are my root causes before I
Yeah.
start, because I don't want to dismiss my own experiences and say, oh, I'm just having like a rough day. Kind of like when we, like I think the best excuse that women have in general is that when we are PMSing and we're being like rude to everybody, we're like, oh, it's just, I'm PMSing. But
Yeah.
it doesn't justify our actions. We need to understand like the root causes that yes, we are PMSing, and how does that impact our hormonal shifts, and does it play with our moods. But like when we say that to our husbands or to men, like I'm PMSing, they just associate it to, oh, like basically you're annoying this week, or you're a bee this week, or whatever.
Unreasonable. Yeah.
Like you're unreasonable, and rather than really connect with the fact that this is actually a hormonal shift for women. The same
Yeah.
with motherhood. Once you give birth, there's this massive hormonal shift,
Yeah.
and like we become rebirthed, if that makes sense,
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
whole new version of you, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, it's like how do we practice that self-compassion? Something when I remember when I was pregnant with Asad, you and I think you were still on leave. It was like during the COVID period where we were waiting in lines and stuff like that. But we took your kids to IKEA, and we went I remember we were in your car and we gave your kids ice cream. Like that was their snack. And you and I were just sitting in the front. So they were having their ice cream and it allowed us a moment to just chat.
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me about, the feelings that might come up after you give birth. She's like, I remember I remember you saying, nobody really talks about this, but I just want you to be prepared because nobody really prepared you for it. That the sense of like the feeling of that loneliness or the postpartum part, that you're going to question everything, that you're not going to feel like yourself, and you were just giving me like that heads up to normalize it.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that I really appreciated. And I wish I knew about it so that I could have been there for you through it. But it's one of those, you don't know when you don't know.
Yeah.
And so I thank you for that. And I think that
I'm happy I was able to make.
Yeah. Because that compassion
When I was
allowed me to
pregnant, actually, I didn't have a lot of friends who had kids. Like maybe, I think maybe one friend who already had kids. But again, like, I don't know if it was because we were young or because these things also there weren't as many like podcasts and things to listen to. Like what, almost 8, 9, 10 years ago. So it was a very lonely experience, and it kept making me feel like there was something wrong with me, you know, like, why am I impatient when, you know, I've been waiting for this baby for such a long time. Like, why am I being impatient and triggered and all these things when, you know, it's just a baby crying for his needs. Like he doesn't know any better. So it was a tough experience, but again, that's the purpose of this podcast, right? Is to not have anybody feel alone again, and to lift each other up and talk about the things that people don't always talk about, you know. Like you were mentioning, the hormonal shift and everything like that, but nobody tells you that, like, you're never going to feel the same, like the same person ever again. You're just going to keep changing and evolving, and it's for the best, but it's hard. It's not easy. And if you know, you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, but you need to know that, like, this is shaping you to be a better version of you, or you need to let it shape you to be a better version of you.
Yeah, like as you said, nobody prepares you for the grieving your old self.
Yeah.
You know, it's a process of grief.
Yes.
And that's why I think that part of, like, it's like a rebirth, because it's not that you're not going to exist. There's just a different version of you that's developing. But then how do we show ourselves, you know, grace with that? Because, like, you know, when you're saying, you know, he's just a baby, like, you know, they don't know any better, but we don't know any better either.
Yeah.
We're still learning. And that's the part where we put this pressure where it's like, almost like, okay, you give birth, now you're a mom, and you need to just know how to mom.
You get like, the responsibility right away.
Yeah.
And you feel very overwhelmed, you know?
You know, exactly. I remember when I gave birth and I was at the hospital, and like after I gave birth, and like Ahmed, like my husband, was just laying down and he was sleeping, and I just had, you know, my baby on me, and I was just, and then I was staring at him. I'm like, how did I do this? Why did I do this? And I started like panicking. I'm like, is this a mistake? What just happened? And then like I was happy, but I was just like, what the hell did I do? You know, like this is a whole big responsibility. Yeah. And I remember like the day that we had to leave the hospital, I was like, I'm just a baby. How are they trusting me with this? You know, like this whole other human being I need to take care of.
Yeah.
And it was like, and I don't think anybody could have prepared me for that. I don't think there's a way to, but to your point is that we don't necessarily, it's not that we don't just talk about it, we don't have the space to have these conversations. You know, like oftentimes when we see each other as, you know, friends or something like that, when there's events, we don't have these opportunities to have these deeper conversations, these reflections. You know, we've tried them. We've tried, like, you know, events where we see friends. They're very superficial conversations of, you know, how's work, you know, how's life, you know, it's busy, it's hard. But there was more deeper conversations. Even for us, as even though we've been friends for so long, we really started having these even deeper, heartfelt conversations when we actually experienced motherhood at the same time. When we were on leave together, our bond changed because we had the time to sit together and do that. And I think that allowed us to show compassion towards each other.
Yeah, definitely.
And again, this is what kind of pushed us to start this idea together, so that we can create that space, you know, a community of moms where they can have confidants, you know, like a safe space where they can share their experiences, be it in a open, authentic platform or even an anonymous way. Sometimes we just need like a place to just blurt out what we're feeling, like doing that, you know, that verbal dump, the emotional dump. And then sometimes we don't necessarily are not looking for advice, but we're looking for just a place to be seen and heard, you know? I know we're Muslim and we don't really do this the same way, but we do it through prayer. But you know, like how for Christians or Catholics, they go to confession, like, and they go into that little room and then they just talk to the priest. like in that sense, where you're like, it's supposed to be a non-judgment space or whatever. It's like, that's what we're trying to create, that space where you can just kind of have mom confessions, like, this day I just wanted to ring my child and I could, like, I'm just tired, I'm just like fed up and I don't know what to do with this feeling. I know I used the example of the confession, but I mean, we have prayer and we can do it the same way where we ask, but you know what I mean. I'm trying to put a picture, an image that could resonate with more people maybe. But yeah. So
let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Related to the topic that we're discussing. Do you have any specific ways that you practice kindness towards yourself as a mom? And okay, let's start with that.
I think for me, when I find myself feeling those feelings of, impatience, anger, that mom rage, I don't know, like, it's a weird, I become very judgmental of myself, or like, what's going on? Like, why can't I get it together? I have a background in nonviolent communication, have a background in working with women and stuff like that. And I've always been able to show them grace. Why can't I show that to myself? So then I start kind of spiraling. So then, one of the ways that I started to shift that, and I really felt that shift, is that really in the last year, I've been really working on changing my own mindset of reframing things. So not falling into like that toxic positivity of, oh, this is just part of motherhood, I have to just embrace it, because it's not easy. It's still the muscle to keep working. But I started to just make sure I made a non-negotiable for myself to fill my own cup, because by doing that, I am allowing myself more grace and like giving myself energy to be more present in certain situations, so that when I do feel a little bit like, I can separate the types of anger that I'm feeling. There's the anger where I'm feeling a buildup because I haven't taken time for myself. And then there's the anger where it's actually like, the kids really made a big mess, and now I'm like, I'm angry because it sets me back or whatever. Like, both of them, like, it's different reasons. But what I notice is that when I find this buildup where I'm not filling my own cup, I become more snappy and irritable, but towards the kids, towards my husband, towards like just people around, because I become impatient. I'm like, okay, but I can't keep allowing this, How do I create that space for myself? So I made non-negotiables up for, and you know this, where I make sure I do a quick workout every day, but it's just to release. It's almost like a way to release everything that I'm feeling. So it's not for the intention of looking a certain way or anything like that, but it actually just gives me that mental space or energy. And it's serving me a lot more than I thought it would. Like, that's where I found that major shift. And I did it gradual, I didn't do this overnight. I've been doing it gradual. Like, I worked myself up to that, but I needed to admit to myself that, okay, now I'm really getting more edgy and mean almost, so I'm like, I had to just reframe it. I needed to reframe it for myself, because and that's how I showed myself grace. It's okay if I don't have it all perfect. Like, I just need to fill up my cup for myself for, for like 15 to 20 minutes a day, so that I can re-energize and be present. And because I made it a non-negotiable, I feel like that's how I'm showing myself compassion. It's a non-negotiable for myself. Like, no matter how busy my day is, I will do it. So it forces me to hold myself accountable. But yeah, I don't know if that answers the question. That's kind of how, like, what kind of came up to mind for me.
I sort of like, I agree with everything you're saying. For me, on the same lines as reframing things in a more positive way, I try to practice more gratitude.
Mm.
And this is something that I've heard a lot of. I know we both listen to like the Mindset Mentor. He mentions this a lot during his
Yeah.
podcast, practicing gratitude. And this is something like as Muslims, we're supposed to be doing anyway, because we pray 5 times a day. But you know, if you're praying just like meditation, if you're meditating without actually being, you know, how do I say this, like in the zone, kind of like really
You have
concentrated
that
on your meditation
intention.
or on your prayer, then it's not giving you what it's supposed to give you, you know.
Yeah.
So practicing gratitude um every day, like waking up and thinking about what I'm grateful for, and even when like things get overwhelming, trying to shift that perspective and like look at what I'm grateful for in that moment as well. Not just,
Yeah.
you know, I don't just wake up in the morning and say, okay, I'm grateful to have kids and have a husband and that's it, you know, like really like throughout the day as well.
Yeah.
Grateful for whatever in that moment is happening, what am I grateful for? And
Yeah.
it kind of shifts your perspective. Okay, so this thing that's really bothering me or giving me like negative feelings, it de-escalates it. Like it's not as important as I thought it was, you know?
Yeah. No, that's very true. That's very true. And it is, and I've like, and I know like even with whether it's with the Mindset Mentor or just in general, when you look at this, a lot of people do talk about practicing gratitude. I don't think we give it enough credit to how much it could help you reframe things. And it's true. And like, you know, a very simple example of that is that, you know, right now it's Ramadan and we invite people over for a iftar or anything like that. And I had a friend over and I opened my fridge and I just felt like the fridge was so disorganized because I have so many leftovers and stuff like that. So just I blurted it out when I opened the fridge. I just said, "Oh, like the fridge is driving me nuts. It's like it looks very like all over the place. Like I don't know what I have anymore." And she ends up telling me, "But that means you have food."
Yeah,
And I was
exactly.
like, "Thank you."
Yeah.
You know, like thank you for saying that to me because it's
Yeah.
so easy to fall into. And you know, I think part of that reasoning of why I went into it, it's again the social media where everything needs to be looking a certain
Yeah.
way, and like those videos of the click clack clack, like the people just doing ASMR videos of showing their organized fridges, and like because I had somebody over, I think I opened it and I felt like it's like what if I'm going to be judged or I don't know what happened, but
Yeah.
that's why. But to reframe it right away and say, but this is actually a sign of you have food, you have
Yeah.
filled bellies,
Hmm.
and I was like, okay, gratitude, you know, like it's just
Yeah.
it's so subtle, but we don't necessarily take the time to pay attention to it. But and it is an impactful way to practice self compassion.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, for sure. I have a question to you. Um, well, okay, I have to change my question because it's a little bit similar to what you what you ended up
There's
asking.
only so much you can ask.
Okay, so as friends navigating motherhood together, how have we supported each other with kindness? And what have we learned about our own capacity for compassion through our friendship? So how did we create that for ourselves?
I think just by being there for each other and having these discussions, and again, like you said, like it took your friend to reframe like the situation for you to see it in a different perspective. So I think it was the same thing for both of us. Whenever we were feeling like it was too much, we would just, you know, talk about it and see that we're not alone again. So that we're both living kind of the same struggles, the same
Mm-hmm.
um, challenges, and I think that that helps. Like even just to know that somebody else is living through the same thing, and okay, what did you try? What did I try? Just to talk about it helps a lot, and like helping you feel less overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think for me, I have two ways where I find that we showed each other compassion through motherhood. One was in the beginning of our um, babies when they were like newborns. It's being able to like text each other in the middle of the night and be like, "Are you up
Yes.
breastfeeding? Because I'm up breastfeeding," and like, "How are
Yeah,
you surviving
our
this?"
little group.
Yeah, I felt like that, removed a bit of that loneliness.
Yeah.
Like that was one way for me where I felt like, okay, because I didn't experience it the same way with my first pregnancy.
Yes.
Whereas with this one, it felt different because we were really going through the thick of it at the same time. Even though it's 3 weeks apart, it's still like they were really newborns and we were able to see them grow together, but we were going through the different regressions at the same time. And like, is your baby sleeping? No, because yeah, mine isn't sleeping either. So I felt like that
Yeah.
allowed us to keep showing up for each other and show that compassion of like, you're not alone. My baby's insane too right now. It's the ways that we were connecting. The other part, I felt like we've been showing each other some grace or compassion is the way that we gather our families. We made it very like easy, go with the flow. Not an expectation that things have to look a certain way, be a certain way. I think we removed any form of like formalities that it just makes it easy to bring our families together. And I think it's because we created something for ourselves, but even we created that space for our husbands. So it's like
Yeah, it's true.
and then for our kids, well, it's nice to see them flourish. But I think that's one way that we showed compassion is that we're really creating a space for each other to just be, you know. And I think that helps in a certain way because there are friendships where you could have, another parent or mom, but like if you don't talk about the things that put pressure on you, the other person won't know
Yeah,
where it's coming from.
exactly. Yeah.
So it's hard to connect with somebody when like we all struggle with our own internal like messaging or negative messages, anything like that, but we don't know what's going on in somebody else's head, and then
Yeah.
that could be the actions that whatever messaging they have leads their actions. So I think by being authentic with each other, talking about things, removing some of that pressure, it just allows us to be present in that moment.
Yeah.
And it's something I'm very grateful for.
Yeah.
I appreciate about her.
We created our own village.
Yeah. Oh yes. And it's the beginning. It's the beginning of something. I don't know where this project is gonna lead us or where this platform is gonna lead us, but
yeah,
I think it's coming from a need that we had. And rather than wait for others to create it for us, we're ripping off the Band-Aid and creating it for ourselves. And maybe others will join along. And that's the intent.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can continue, lifting each other up and together, but also lift up other moms up as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are there any other things that you'd want to share? This is more of like our intro podcast, just to start a conversation going. Is there anything else you want to touch on?
So some of the topics that we're going to be discussing in the future podcasts are going to be around mom guilt, about how to handle it, how to overcome it, how to identify like the triggers. We'll also be discussing things like how does social media play a role in our motherhood in this day and age, and how we can manage the overflow of contradicting information that we get sometimes that makes it harder to be the best mom we can be, essentially. So yeah, we're really seeking to encourage each other and connect with other moms. So just stay tuned for more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. And follow us on Instagram, the Mompowerment. We're going to put our handle in the description, and that way you can be up to date with any new podcasts that we're going to be uploading. Thank you.
Thank you.